Hello and welcome to The Connection Compass. I am your host, Andrea Louise Evans. To find out more about my work, please visit andrealevans.com. Today, I'm talking to intuitive abstract artist Beth Elson. Our conversations run deep as we talk about life journeys, mental health, taking risks, letting go of shame, and Beth's wonderful art journey and opening up a studio. So settle in for our conversation. Hello, Beth. Welcome to The Connection Compass. It's lovely that you're here and that you could join us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself for people who are listening?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me. It's lovely to
no,
be here.
A joy, a pleasure. Thank you.
So I'm Beth. I'm an intuitive artist based in York in the northeast of the UK. I'm actually a part-time artist. I also work freelance as a business support consultant with SMEs, looking at business operations and efficiencies are very, very different to my art life. I've got two very distinct hats that I wear. But art, I've always been interested in art. It's always been a real pull for me since I was at school. Before that, I've always been very creative. I did art at school, at college, and at university. And unfortunately, when I was much younger, well, and into my adulthood, I suffered with eating disorders and have navigated the roller coaster of that for many, many years now. And it meant back in the day when I was doing my art degree, I didn't actually finish my degree because I did become quite poorly. That's something I often reflect on and look back at, and maybe the path of my art career hasn't gone down the journey I thought. I wanted to learn art at university. I wanted to teach, and that was going to be my life, and it didn't work out like that. After I got a little bit better, I got a job and got into the corporate world.
And then when you got the job, did
Yeah,
you move away from art or was it always part of your life?
I did. Well, originally when I when I left university, I concentrated on getting better at first, so it wasn't working. But then I moved to London, and I had all of these grand ideas of visiting all the galleries, and I'd be in an amazing place to do that. And in reality, I mean, my gosh, this was 20 years ago, maybe, which is quite scary to think of that time. But I moved to London thinking it would be wonderful and exciting. And the reality of that was it was very expensive. I was there on my own. I just had to get a job, and the job was a full-time job. And I guess I felt a bit isolated down there.
Yes.
I have always struggled with my confidence in terms of meeting new people, in terms of putting myself out there as an artist and things like that. So the London experience for me was wonderful, and I wouldn't change that. It taught me a lot, but it taught me also that I couldn't afford to live in London and do the gallery lifestyle. And, I was in my very early 20s, just coming out of a very difficult period with my mental health. And in hindsight, it wasn't the best thing for me to do, but I did learn so much in being there and learn what I didn't want actually. So I did have to leave my art behind. I didn't have the funds, I mean, I'm not saying that necessarily if you're starting out in art or want, a creative life, it has to be expensive. But, I couldn't afford to feed myself really, never mind buying art materials as well. Yeah, so I did have to leave it behind a little bit. Yeah.
And I mean, thinking back to how you say your path hasn't gone quite the way how you wanted it to, do you feel that there's something there that you'd still like to go back and do that? Or do you feel really happy with where you are now?
I do. And I think, I often have this discussion with my husband, and it's something that I have just recently actually learned to accept and navigate around the almost grief that I have felt for a lost life
I
from
understand.
leaving university and having this vision of being a teacher, and which is what I always wanted to do, a teacher or a care bear. Those are the two things that I wanted to be. And I didn't have that. And I felt for a long time that that was lost for me. And I was almost grieving that life, that vision that I originally had when I
Yeah.
was at university. But actually, the life I have now I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone through all of that journey and all of that learning about myself and about other people and about the world. And so again, recently, I think it's more an acceptance of
Yeah.
actually that wasn't the life for me. That's what I thought I wanted. But now the life I have is what I want, and it is fulfilling me. Now it's perhaps not what I thought, but that's not a bad thing.
No.
Um, you
And
know,
you are teaching art, aren't you? And
yeah, yeah,
the way how you create your videos online, they are educational in terms of your process as well. And then you have your workshops. So
yeah.
the question I'm asking, because often it's something that I'm really interested. We have these ideas about how we want our life to be, and they don't always go that way. But
Mm,
sometimes what we end up is something actually in a place where allowed to be freer, where there are no constraints.
yeah,
And would you see that in that journey around teaching in a school or a university and the way how you're teaching now? Is there some kind of
absolutely.
freedom to it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really interesting. We've just been away for half term and we were driving. So I don't know if we were driving back to the airport or something, but the children wanted to play Would You Rather? And Polly was asking to Polly's 11, so she just started high school, but she was asking, would you rather have this job or this job? And she said to me, would you rather be an art teacher or teach your art workshops? And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I never really thought about it in that way before, but immediately I said art workshops. That's
Wow.
what I want to do because with teaching, although there's still a massive part of me that would have liked to have done that, obviously, the joy of seeing people learn and enjoy being creative is huge for me. Teaching isn't just about that anymore, and it never has been. There's paperwork and there's all sorts of things that isn't the teaching and it isn't the joy of art necessarily. But with my workshops, people come to workshops because they want that creative release, they want that mindful journey, they want to learn potentially. And also what I teach is intuitive art. So they want to let go. And I've had so many people recently come in and say, what, and I talk about their objective and what they want to get from the workshop. And a lot of it is about letting go of perfection. And that's huge for me because that's been a massive part of my own journey and it continues to be. So being able to provide a calm, safe, and nurturing space for people to come in and let go of that and not have that judgment and constraints, like you say, is huge. And that's what I find so wonderful about the workshops. And I'm in control of that, which I wouldn't necessarily be if I was teaching in a school.
Yeah.
So I do think that this path has led me back to this place actually where I am teaching essentially and creating this space for people to be creative and mindful and gone full circle. But this way, without those constraints, is a great experience for me to be able to offer that. So my answer to Polly was yes, definitely
Yeah.
workshops rather than being a teacher.
And I just want to go back to something that you said earlier as well. And it's something that resonates with me as well around having two lives and them living side by side and
Yeah.
how you find that. So I've had a 7-year period of having two lives running and it was okay until it wasn't. So how do you find it and is there any friction and how do you move around that?
Yeah, there is absolutely. And I think there are lots of transitions daily, moving from one hat to another.
Yeah.
I work full time, probably some weeks more than full time
Yeah.
hours if it's your own business, which my art is. So I'm self-employed and my art business together. And I'm a mum, and there's all of that stuff to do, all the emails from school and all of that. So there's lots of shifting and lots of transitions, and I am getting much better at that. The most difficult thing for me is switching off my creative brain, not my creative brain, because I do actually use that in my work in terms of problem solving. That's very much part of my work. Really, it's the pull to being creative, the pull to painting that I find very difficult to switch off.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I go through the week and actually my client work is very busy and I haven't had chance to paint, I
Yeah.
can feel myself going, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So And then I think, right, have I stopped being productive in what I'm doing? Do I need to break and go and do something else? Whether it's, create a reel, which is creative in itself, or look at my art and think about, okay, what's the next step? Look for inspiration. Go for a walk. What's my next collection? What does that look like? So I do now try and pepper my week with a real mix. I used to try and be very regimented and go, right, Monday to Thursday is client work. Fridays is always a studio day. And maybe at the weekend I'll sneak some painting in. And it didn't work for me because 4 days of solid non-painting, non-art related work does not work for me. It does not work for my nervous system. It just doesn't work. So for me, it's about learning, and I'm still learning. I don't profess to be wonderful at this. The transition from office work, very project driven work, which is a lot of my client work, lots of deadlines, lots of communication with very, very, different people across very different businesses, to working on my own with my music, with my paints in a very solitary but mindful studio. So it is difficult, I think, if for anybody else who's navigating that and doing the two. I think the thing that has really helped me is letting go of guilt,
Yeah.
because it was the guilt that was driving oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I should be doing client work, I should be doing artwork. The artwork for me has always come bottom of the pile because
Yeah.
it's not a job, it's not a real job. Again, all of these things from the past coming back.
Mm.
And I've tried to shift and reframe that a little bit, in that just a tiny, tiny little thing. When, me and my husband talk about the week, and he'll say, what's your plan for today? And I would have always said, oh, I'm working this morning and then I'm going to paint this afternoon. And we talked about the language around that, in that painting for me is my work
Yeah.
as well as my client work.
Yeah.
So now it gets a bit confusing, because I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to work for the whole day. But
Yeah.
some of it is my artwork and some of
Mm.
it is my client work. So I've tried to reframe the language that I use, both internally and externally with other people. If I'm having a day off and I'm going to paint, I don't say it's a day off
Yeah.
anymore. It's not a hobby for me. This is, a huge part of my working life. It's
Mm.
my career. It's something that I want to grow. So that language, I think, when we're navigating a landscape where we have those two hats, those two jobs, if you like, is really, really important. And that internal language as well. It's not, I'm cheating because I'm painting and I should be working. That's how it used to feel for me, and I would feel guilty.
Mm.
And I've felt a massive shift with that, and that has been so useful in terms of my productivity as well with my art business. Because, if I sit down and go, right, I'm going to work on the website, or I'm going to work to create some content, I'm going to work on my email list, and this is all legitimate. You don't just paint. Anybody with their own business knows
Yeah.
what you create is a portion of that. There's all of the admin and the management and the marketing behind it. That's legitimate work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I
I think
agree.
that guilt around sitting and doing that and it not being a real job actually prevented me from being productive and efficient within that time. So yeah, definitely letting go of the guilt and reframing the language.
I really liked what you were saying around recognizing when you needed to paint and what it feels like. And
Yeah.
that was quite a pivotal point. I'm not a painter by any means, but it it was really pivotal in me understanding how important my creativity
Yeah.
was, because working in health and social care, it gets very busy. Your time
Yeah.
gets taken up very quickly, and before you know it, you're doing little bits and pieces outside of your working day,
Yeah.
because your focus has been taken up with something else. And then before you know it, a couple of months had passed
Mm.
and I hadn't been creative. And
Yeah.
one day I just had this image in my mind. I was sat there and I couldn't describe this feeling. I just had like a green image in front with like
Mm.
bars. And I was like, I feel caged. And that was a
Yeah.
real pivotal moment in understanding how important creativity was to me. And I was like, right now I need to sort it out. But I really like that you recognize that there is that feeling when we can't
Oh,
create that
yeah.
there's an internal struggle, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's understanding in your bodies and our brains and having that self-awareness. And I often talk to my clients about this actually, people who often my clients are SMEs, but the owners are still very much working the business and working very long hours and doing all of the work, wearing all of the hats. But there is a time within a day where somebody sits down and says, right, I'm going to do an 8 hour day, 10-hour day. You are not productive for 10 hours. We're human beings, we're not
Yes.
computers.
Mm.
And our bodies do need rest and they do need inspiration and understanding your productive time, whether that's a morning, whether you're, a night owl or a morning person or throughout the day. I know, for example, I'm much more productive in the morning. The afternoon, I tend to slow down. So that might be for other time. Yes, so productive time. I think if you know you have a day's work, whatever that looks like, whether that's 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Again, I think this concept of a 9 to 5, either in a working week or a self-employed person, I must sit here for from 9 till 5 and be productive the whole time and do all the work and da, 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 da. That's not how we're built. And
Yes.
I think having that understanding of that, making sure you weave into your day rest time away from
Mm.
screens, rest time away from thinking, some fresh air, some proper food, sit down away from screens, that kind of thing. It's all, very obvious common sense stuff, but we can get so caught up in there. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this,
Yeah.
check, 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 check. So when I got my client hat on, I have to say, right, well, when are you most productive? When do you feel that? Listen to yourself. When are you slowing down? And when are you making perhaps rash decisions? Because you
Mm.
just want to get something done quickly,
Yeah.
and let's structure days around that. And again, I try and do that with my work. And I know I'm more productive on a morning. So I do emails and I try and do meetings on a morning. And then I will do something else in an afternoon, whether it's admin tasks or whatever.
And I know today we're talking about art and intuition, but it's when we are on that conveyor belt of just doing, ticking off the list, and we're stuck in a computer, it's overriding that intuition, isn't it? And that's why we need to get up and get out and go for a walk and have some food and do different
Yeah.
things to
Yeah.
open that space up, don't we? So we can hear ourselves.
Absolutely. And that's really key, I think, what you just said there in terms of hearing ourselves rather than
Yeah.
just being so focused on something and not listening to your intuition. And intuition for me is not just about art. It's something that I am still learning and will be learning for a very long time, I'm sure. That actually the benefits of using your intuition are so far reaching. And there are times that when I've also used it in my client business and thought, okay, let's step back. How does this feel? And what direction are we driving in it? So I definitely 100% use it in my artwork, but it's also weaving into the rest of my life as well,
Yeah.
which has actually been quite freeing in a way. I know it sounds silly, but things down to food, which obviously is a really big thing for me. I've always struggled around the conversations around food, but applying intuitively feelings, thoughts, emotions, and understanding that a little bit more has really helped me over this past year deal with
Yeah.
the mental health challenges around.
Yeah. I know it is. I navigate my whole world by thought and feeling. It's with some sensible stuff. Well, logical,
Yeah,
with some logic
yeah.
thrown in there as well. But
Yeah, I mean, if I applied my intuition to absolutely everything, then it would not work. There has to be some,
yeah, me too.
I would be making some crazy decisions, I'm sure. I am quite impulsive, and again, just trying to sit with my intuition rather than going. I can't think of an example. I was going to go to a food example actually, but I won't go to a food example. Go, oh, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
That's what my intuition is telling me. But actually, is it? Is it my intuition telling me that, or is it driven by something else? I'm getting so much better at almost challenging my brain and kind of the activity that goes. And is this true intuition? Have I lowered my shoulder? Have I unclenched my jaw, which is the really big thing? Okay, just let go. Just wriggle around, just take a moment and then lean into that feeling and truly what is that? So again, I spend a lot of time doing that and stopping the thinking almost and quietening or trying to quieten down all of the thoughts and everything that's going on. Because like going back to what you said a few minutes ago about hearing that
Yeah.
the world is noisy, our brains are noisy, social media is very noisy, and wading through all of that is really difficult.
I just opened when you come onto your computer and you open the browser and then like these squares come up and they've got all these news articles in there.
Yeah, yeah,
You just feel overwhelmed, don't you? Just at the sight
yeah.
of I'm completely with you. Was there a process from university being in London and then coming back up north and
Mm.
starting your journey to where you are now with your art? Did it stop and then it picked up again gradually? Process? What?
It was still quite a long time to
Yeah,
be honest. And when I moved back up to York from London, I was still in my early 20s. I'd gone from, living on not very much in London to moving back to York, not having a job at that point. I just left and came back. So got a job and back into corporate in operations similar to what I was doing in London. But I loved the company and I loved the people. I am very much people person. And that business grew quite quickly. And I stuck with that and I got given so many opportunities. I traveled the world with this
yeah,
company. Went to Australia, Singapore, America, Kuala Lumpur, Brazil. And that was a chunk of, say, 10, 11 years of my life. Now I look back and go, how did I do that? I can't even drive down the road without going back, where am I going? And using my Google Maps. I have no idea how I did it. But it was a wonderful experience. I learned so, so much, but I still wasn't being creative. And there was still something burning. Just, oh, I need to get back to this. My husband and I, we got married and we had two children and
mhm,
I still continued to work in that role until they were, I don't know, maybe 5 and 3. And then I left because I was traveling a lot and it didn't fit with our family life
yeah,
anymore. Didn't want to leave the children for 2 weeks at a time. And I did want to get back to something creative. So I was either very brave or very stupid and left that very well paid, very stable job to go on my own. And originally I set up an online gift business, which turned into a high street bricks and mortar shop for a good few years. And then can't remember how many years ago, this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I had the bricks and mortar shop and I picked up my brushes again. I just felt this kind of this need and I painted some I painted some pictures and I took them into the shop and I put them on the shelves, framed them, put them in the shop, and I didn't tell anyone they were mine. I didn't sign them. They were original artwork, but I didn't sign and I sold them. And I'm like, oh, and people were saying nice things.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, maybe I can do this. And I was reminded of that feeling of creating something that actually resonates with other people as well. It's not just something for me because I enjoyed creating it and it was mindful and I go, oh look, I did that. It has ignited something in somebody else.
yeah,
They've seen something in that piece. So it grew, not again, it didn't go from that point.
yeah,
Um, COVID hit, the lease on the shop was up and it was too risky to take that on. So the shop closed, but I continued with my art. And a friend asked me to do a commission, bathroom, big commission. So I was like, oh yes, this is great. Get going again with it. So I created a very small collection of practice work
mhm,
before doing this commission. And then I decided to launch that collection as my first kind of tiptoe back into it. And the collection sold out within like
that's
3 weeks.
amazing.
And I was like, oh, the feeling, the freedom, the creative elements of the thought that actually it wasn't too late for me
Yeah,
was loud
yeah,
then. And it's okay. I don't regret anything I did. I don't regret my corporate life. I don't regret traveling. I learned so much. And I'm able to apply all that learning now to my business, I guess. I build my own websites, I do all my own graphics, I do all everything like that. And I've learned that over years of
Yeah.
having just to do things, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't had a lot of the opportunities I've had. So I'm very, very grateful.
How do you view the shop now? Do you miss it, or do you see it as the stepping stone that got you to where you are now?
Both of those things, I think. I miss it hugely because it was just such a wonderful space. Again, similar to the studio in that I had wonderful music on. I always had a candle burning and I was surrounded by wonderful things and it felt lovely. It was almost like a little sanctuary. I'm not saying it was easy by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't, navigating a bricks and mortar shop through COVID was not easy. But yeah, I do miss it. And often when I'm daydreaming, which I do quite often, I will daydream of a studio with the shop element to it and people. It was the people, it's the conversations that I really miss. And that's part of it. Yeah. So I do miss it, but I wouldn't be where if I hadn't snuck in those pieces of work without my name on, without telling anybody, it might have been a different. Again, I had an opportunity to showcase my work without very slowly and in secret. That gave me a boost and a bit of validation that I needed at that time, actually. So I wouldn't undo that time at all. But it has, in this sense, like you say, been a bit of a stepping stone to just now being me and my art, which feels quite vulnerable.
So tell us about your studio and how do you find a studio? What are you
Yeah.
looking at, and what made you decide to
Yeah. Again, it's either a very brave or stupid decision. I'm not really sure. But like I said,
brave?
I am quite impulsive, and I say I'm quite impulsive. I am, and I do I do take risks,
Yeah.
which kind of goes against actually a lot of the other traits that I have in terms of not very confident. I find it very difficult to pitch myself and kind of get in front of people in that sense. But I am willing to take risks to realize a dream and a vision.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I decided that I was going to, after this first collection, I was going to paint more. And I'm just looking at it now. All right, I'd earned enough money selling my art to buy a garden shed. And that was a big moment for me. I was like,
Right.
I can buy this with my own money. So, and it is a shed. It's a shed with windows, but it's in the garden still now. And I painted in there for a while. And very, very quickly, I completely outgrew it. I didn't have space to fit the canvas size that I was working in and all of this. So a studio came up in the town next to us in Tadcaster, which I never thought about because it was another town. It was somewhere that I'd have to drive to and I wouldn't know how to get there and how could I possibly do that? And all of these silly things. But it came up and I went to see it. And I mean, the walls are not straight, the floors are not straight, the paint's peeling off the front door, but it's got so much character.
It
And I
sounds
just fell in love with the space. And it just felt like home almost straight away.
mm,
So I decided to take the risk. And I thought, again, going back to that, if I do not do this now in my early 40s,
yeah.
I will never do this.
Mm,
My client work, and this is a phrase that came up last year. I don't know if I was listening to Louise Fletcher, who's an artist.
mm,
Um, and she has a podcast called Art Juice with Alice Sheridan. And I was listening to that, and I can't remember what episode it was or anything like that, but they were talking about teaching, I think, potentially teaching as part of that. They're both artists, but they also teach and have memberships. And the phrase financing my freedom came up.
mm,
And for me, I thought the days where I feel very frustrated that I can't get to the studio for one reason or another,
yeah.
and I think about my client work, which I love because it's people and I love helping people and grow their own businesses. But there is frustration there. But then I think actually, this part of my life is financing the freedom in this part of my life. So it enables me the freedom to create, which you absolutely need to be able to create that freedom without the constraints of need to make a salary and I need to sell this and I need to sell this and all of that pressure. but I needed the studio space. I needed the space to be free in a way to create a mess. When I was working from home, even when I had the shed, there's no electricity, there's no water out there. I was bringing all my paints back in so they didn't freeze or get too warm. I was washing my brushes in the kitchen sink. It was great. And again, I'm very grateful for that time.
It's allowed you to expand, hasn't it? It's give you that expansion to be
Yeah,
to move into that potential that you hold.
absolutely. And I think key to that is appreciating the opportunity. And again, this is where the brave, is it brave or is it stupid? I'm not sure.
It's brave.
It's brave. Let's go brave. I took on the studio and a 3-year lease in the studio probably before my art business was ready financially, but within a month I was already there
Yeah.
because I'd allowed that, I think that feeling of abundance, and I'm going to let it all in now because I'm not constrained by space or time or, I'd set up a good format in terms of going to the studio and things like that. And there's still a massive journey for me, hopefully, in terms of developing my art career and the studio and everything I do there. But the freedom of the space, the freedom of having a separate space that I can lock the door and come home and leave that behind has been wonderful. So I'm glad I took that decision.
And that's why sometimes we need to take those risks, don't they?
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when you go to take a risk, not everybody around you will understand it. But
Yeah.
it's because they can't see what you're feeling or what you're seeing.
Yeah.
It's
That's it.
hard
Yeah.
to articulate, isn't it? Why
Yeah.
you need to take that risk.
Yeah, and it's almost like a chicken and egg, isn't it? In that I knew I wanted to run the workshops and I couldn't do that from my garden shed. And I wanted to do bigger canvases and I couldn't do that from my garden shed. And all of these things, if I had the studio, I could do X, Y, and Z and that vision. And it's belief, isn't it? It's that
Yeah.
belief in that vision
Yeah.
that helps me make that decision.
And did you find that there was a process to get there, or did you were a bit impulsive and you just went for it anyway, or did you find that you had a process leading up to that decision?
I wasn't actively looking for a studio at that point. I'd had a massive operation on my foot the year before, so I hadn't painted for 6 months really. I couldn't walk or stand for a very long time. And that time out had almost allowed me to think, what do I want to do? And one of our hobbies is looking on Rightmove for various different. And I just started looking on there for commercial things. And I would always up for months and months and months. But it was part of my daydreaming almost. It was part of my dream to go and, create Pinterest boards, brand boards, and what I'd like a studio to look like if I ever had one. But just because, interiors and aesthetics are my thing, I love kind of that, putting those things together. So I wasn't actually at that point actively looking for anything. The
Mm,
studio came up. It was a beautiful space. Another business that I knew had previously had the studio as a candle business. She had it as her studio. So I knew, that the building was lovely. And it, like I say, it just felt right. That's not to say I went one day, signed the lease the next day. It was a long process. And although I am impulsive, there is a very logical part of my brain as well that kicks
yeah.
it. And when I say actually my art business wasn't ready financially, I don't mean, and I wouldn't advocate this in terms of doing anything you can't afford to do in terms of the risk. I believed I could generate a revenue that I wanted to with more space. And I immediately got to that point.
Mhm.
But it wasn't a quick, it took me 3 months, I think, to get into the studio, potentially a
Yeah.
little bit longer.
It's having that confidence in that knowing, isn't
Yeah.
it? That internal uh,
Yeah.
compass, knowing
Absolutely.
voice. Yeah.
And for me, it was a real combination. I'm a big fan of Excel, and I had lots of different forecasts going on and lots of different scenarios, if you like. Okay, if I use the space for this, okay, what are the costs and how do I generate that revenue? And if I use the space for this and da 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 da. So, which is very much part of my client business
Yeah.
head. So this is where those two things actually work beautifully because
Yeah.
I can use that knowledge and experience operating businesses at various different levels and take snippets of that for my own business. So I'd run the formulas and I had all the forecasts and everything and coupled with that, I had the belief in my work, which I'd
Yeah.
never had before. So it was that alignment was just like, oh, okay, this is it. And despite not having any heating or hot water this winter because it's not working, it's still a wonderful space to have.
And I suppose we need to go to your artwork and talk about your art and
Yeah.
talk about your processes, the type of art, and what you love about it, your
Yeah.
inspiration.
Yeah. So again, I said, didn't I, when we chatted about doing this call, that we wouldn't have a problem with talking because
No, and we've not. I'm not even used the listed questions. We're just
a big challenge that I have is stopping talking actually. So once I get talking about art and inspiration, so I will try and be measured and
oh no, no, no.
controlled.
Please just go for it.
So so more recently, actually, I have used the word intuitive artist because of my own process and my own journey of learning how to do that. So I paint abstract work inspired by lots and lots of different things, music, but also nature. And it's not nature in a traditional sense that I would paint a seascape or a landscape.
Yeah.
I take inspiration from colors and from compositions and from light in nature. But one of the things that I've always struggled with my art and other elements of my life as well, quite hugely, is perfectionism and being paralyzed by that. Having this idea of what the perfect piece of art looks like, the perfect house, the perfect whatever it might be, and actually being a little bit paralyzed then by that process and go, oh my God, it doesn't look perfect. I couldn't possibly sell that, or I couldn't possibly do this. Now, for me, and bear in mind, this has been, years and years of learning and accepting and changing. Now, understanding the process of actually I create a lot of rubbish before I can create something beautiful because it is about letting go of that end vision. So I don't tend to paint representatively. I don't paint landscapes in that traditional sense. I wouldn't even say I paint abstract landscapes. It's not, the link isn't that strong. I literally pick my palette and I'm guided by what colors ground me, usually pink and greens, very muted tones, very earthy tones. There's always a pop of pink in it though. And I'm guided by the color and I literally just start without that end vision.
Right.
And I see what happens on the canvas. And then I take a step back and look at the composition. What do I like? What don't I like? What feels good for me? What's bringing me joy? And then I go back in and work away. So I have a piece that is in my new collection that I've been working for 2 years
Wow.
because we never connected.
Right.
And I never felt like it was joined up, if you like.
Yeah.
And well, maybe a month ago, we had a moment in the studio, the
Yeah.
two of us, and it all just came together. And I was like, this is it. And I knew, ordinarily pieces don't take me 2 years to do. It would be a much shorter process. And I tend to create a collection over a few months, so 3 or 4 months maybe. Some of those pieces I will have reworked 5 or 6 times so they look entirely different, but it's all based on my intuition and what feels right for me at that moment. So I can go in one day and it'll be much brighter colours or mainly pink, and then I'll go in the next day. I'm not feeling that today, and it changes, and they all develop hopefully their own personality and their own story. Each piece has kind of a story behind it.
So does the connection feeling have a particular description to that? Is it a feeling? Is it
I think it's a feeling. Well, I don't know how to describe it really. It's difficult because I suppose what I'm thinking of when I'm painting, and it's not always the painting, sometimes I'm navigating different things in life or listening to a song that particularly resonates with me and it takes me off on a journey. But for me, I think it's looking at that piece and something literally just clicks and I feel
right? Okay.
joy.
Mhm.
And then I feel it, and it usually has to do with probably the music I'm listening to and the lyrics that have really resonated with me when I'm painting it. Then comes the story, and I'm like, that is about that. So the piece I'm talking about that took 2 years is called Chapter 11, and it's because it's had 11 lives.
Wow.
Um, but it's chapter 11, but under that final layer of pain are another 10 layers of pain that each tell their own story and all look entirely different. Even the color palettes change drastically throughout.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Yeah, and I wish I'd had taken pictures through every, and I haven't, unfortunately. I have some of them, but I can tell the story then about chapters. And for me, that one is about not feeling shame. I've talked about just today in this 40 minutes going to university, failing university, which was my kind of thought about that. Moving to London, failing London because I couldn't afford to do that. And I didn't go to any galleries actually when I was there, and all of these things and the shame around chopping and changing what I have done in my
Yeah.
life. And I have held on to that shame, and that's been quite debilitating for me. Chapter 11 is about letting go of that shame,
Okay.
accepting that I'm in chapter 11. This is my book now, I'm chapter 11. And chapter 11 is just a different part. But actually, I wouldn't have got to chapter 11 if I hadn't experienced chapter 1 through 10. And letting go of that shame, letting go of, yeah, I'm going to use the word failed like that because I don't believe that that's the word. But that has led me to where I am. If
Yeah,
that
it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because first of all, you're not on your own. I didn't do well at school, which people are often quite shocked about. I didn't do well at school. I didn't particularly do well at college. I started excelling in my 20s, and then I was still in the education system at 35, and I didn't finish my public health masters. I left with a postgraduate diploma.
Yeah.
The dissertation I didn't do particularly well in. They wanted me to restart it and have it turned around in 3 months. We'd had three family deaths at the time in the space of 6 months, and I just wasn't in the headspace.
Yeah.
And I had
Yeah.
this yearning to be creative. And I recognize what you're saying because I feel shame about those moments. I still carry shame from finishing school, for not doing well at school, not doing particularly well at college, even
Mm.
though it's not really made a blind bit of difference
No.
to how life is. But I think I don't know if it's a societal expectation of how life is like to be,
Mm.
but the reality is it's not like that for some of us.
No, it's
But it
not. And
doesn't mean to say that we're failing. We just have a different path in life, I think.
no, absolutely. And I think recently, over the past year, I've had I'd say my little boy, he's not a little boy, he's much taller than me now, he's 14, but he has a group of friends. And they were all talking about who their inspiration was at school one day. And one of his friends said me,
Ah,
because he thinks I'm loaded because I'm an artist. Apparently that's it. That's his words. I'm like, okay, let's just go with that. Thinks I must be very rich. But that is not typical to be an artist and have that kind of career. And he was inspired by that. My little girl, one of her friends, always says to me, I just want a shop like you used to have. When I grow up, that's what I want to do. And my niece will say to me, I want to be like Auntie Betty. I want to be an artist when I'm bigger. And I'm just like, oh, that is fulfillment.
yeah,
Inspiring people. I did do well at school and I did do well at college. My mental health took a nosedive at that point. And I think society expects you, like I said, this is a whole other podcast, isn't it? The educational system. But society expects you to do well, get your job, get married, get a dog.
yes,
And it's a checklist, isn't it? That we all
yeah,
go through. And these expectations that we will parent and we will have a full-time job and we will keep a wonderful house
yeah,
and we will drink enough water every single day and keep all of our plants alive, and it's a huge overwhelming expectation. And I think like you, I've carried that shame of not ticking all of those boxes
yeah.
necessarily, not going down the conventional route of career, job, success comes in different ways, I think.
Yeah, and creative life isn't anything to do with tick boxing, isn't it? So if you're creative, you
Mm,
just you just
yeah.
don't fit in those tick boxes at all.
No, no, you don't. And brains, I think, society is learning, isn't it?
Yes.
And changing and adapting, not at the rate we need it to, but it is
Yeah.
changing. And hopefully things will change for this next generation. But yes, things that we need to look at a holistic approach to that and how people learn and how people may thrive in a work environment, but in a different way, not a 9 to 5 job necessarily, and not in a sit down and do your exam kind of success model. I think success, again, part of my journey is reframing what success is.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my journal actually at Christmas time, what is success for me? And it's being able to walk Ralph for an hour on a morning before I start work. It's being able to go to all the parents' evenings and pick the children up. It's been able to choose when I am creative and when I can paint. That is success for me now.
Yeah.
Whereas 10 years ago, I would have gone, oh my God, and I'm leaving this corporate job and, I'm failing because I don't have this career. I'm not this career person anymore and I'm not traveling the world. And da, 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 da. That isn't success for me now. So reframing that perception has been really important, I
And
think.
society's got a lot of learning around that as well, around what success is. It's not the
Mm.
big over kind of,
Yeah,
Switzerland and a castle to your name,
that's exactly
that
it.
actually it's something smaller and more meaningful, I
Yeah,
think, for
yeah,
us.
absolutely. And I think, you know, this starts with me in terms of acceptance of that, what my journey looks like, what my career, because it is a career still, what that looks like, and what does my husband call it? A mixed portfolio career, I think we call it.
I
Yeah,
really like that.
portfolio career, and I like that because I do feel like I'm quite a rounded person in that sense, in that I have experience of running my own business. I have experience of other people's businesses and their struggles. I have corporate experience. I have all of this and actually molded into one. There's elements of that actually makes me quite a good business person
Yeah.
y- to run my business as well. Hopefully, as I say, this is, I think, I'm hoping the beginning of the journey for me as an artist.
Mm.
I hope that's where I am, and I'm just excited to see how it grows and changes.
And just before we finish, could you share about your workshops, which I'm booked on, by the way?
Oh,
I'm,
thank
uh,
you so much.
I'm booked on to the May one.
So I've got dates up until May now. There's only actually 3 spaces left. Got two in April and one in May. So the workshops are 3-hour workshops, intuitive painting. So, it encompasses a lot of what we talked about today in terms of letting go and letting go of that end vision. I teach techniques and I guide people in terms of which brushes to use and what techniques, how much paint to use, to achieve a particular look throughout the workshop. However, it is about loosening your shoulders. It's about mark making. So if you have no experience at all with abstract art, any painting, or conversely, if you have a lot of experience and you are a very representative artist, if you're doing still lifes, if you're doing watercolor florals, for example, this is an entirely different approach and uses different parts of your brain and letting go of that end goal of the worry around, or if I just put this mark on here, what will happen? And I don't know. Let's see what happens and let's see how it makes you feel. So, what I try to do with my workshops, I hope this is the case, is create a safe, nurturing, and calm environment to allow people to let go. There's no judgment. There is no criticism. There's definitely no laughing. There is no self-deprecation. You will get sent out of the room if there is any of that. It is about enjoying being creative, using it in a safe environment where you don't have to wash up afterwards either, because I do all of that. And I'm absolutely loving the workshops. I still get so nervous at the beginning of every one, But as soon as I start talking, people start painting. It's like, oh, it's literally, you can hear that in the room. Everybody go, oh, this is lovely. And I have to say, so far, I can't actually remember how many I've run now because I've done quite a few private workshops. So people have come to the workshops and then gone, I'm going to bring all my friends. So I did private workshops after that as well. There have been so many beautiful pieces of art created. And from people who have walked in and go, well, I'm not going to be able to create things. I'm not creative. And I've never done anything like this in my life. But they've been able to let go and use their intuition and connect with something, a feeling or an emotion. So yeah, they're just it's a beautiful way to spend an afternoon. And you get a beautiful piece of art at the end of it as well.
And
so.
you have an exhibition at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah. So my current collection, Finding Hope, that was launched on the 14th of February, but I'm currently exhibiting that, the whole collection, which was quite a stressful timescale to finish that and get everything done by the 14th of February in Pairings Wine Bar, which is in the centre of York, a gorgeous little place. So I've got all the work currently there. All the work is on the website as well. What I'm intending to do over the next weeks and months is tell the story of all of these pieces.
Oh, I can't wait. That'll be amazing to hear.
Yeah, so hopefully people resonate and connect with those pieces. A lot we've talked about today, like you say, I'm not alone. The things that we've talked about, other people are feeling or navigating or going through themselves or have gone through. And it's about, for me, sharing those kind of snippets of the journey and giving hope.
Yeah.
This is the point of it, finding hope is, when we're navigating really actually difficult times, quite dark times for some people, it's really heavy and it's really loud, that you can find hope in little things that you can hold on to until that light comes back, and so that's what the pieces that are about, so different snippets of my journey, and hopefully people resonate and connect with that and find hope in those pieces.
And the last question is, where can people find you? Socials, Instagram?
Yeah, so Instagram, Beth Elston _art. My website is just BethElstonArt.com. I'm on Facebook and Pinterest as well. So yeah, I'd love to connect with people, hear their stories as well. I have a lot of conversations in my DMs about mental health actually and emotions. And my DMs are always open for anybody who's got any questions about my own journey and obviously the art. But I love conversations. Hence the reason I can't stop talking. But yeah, my DMs are always open.
It's been amazing. We did say we wouldn't have any problem talking.
No, I know.
Between us.
No, we could probably talk for a couple more hours actually, couldn't we?
Well, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, Andrea. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely.
What a great episode that was with Beth. As I was editing the podcast, I felt quite emotional re-listening to our conversation. Our human stories of human struggle, the highs, the lows, and wins and successes. We are never alone on this journey. And I hope this episode inspires you to find and do the things that you love. If you are interested in finding out more about Beth and her work, her workshops, you will find her details in the show notes. And thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Connection Compass. If you think it will help someone else, please leave a review at podchaser.com. If you have any questions, please visit Andrea L. Evans' Facebook page, and remember to keep talking, keep connecting for a more interconnected world.